was all over the place, mostly downside, but a few pharma businesses that ripped. Teva up 26.5%. George, this is a stock that has had a rough go of it over the years. There was just a lot of competition for generics, but boy, have they found their stride now for really since the middle of last year, it seems like.
Yeah, I was just looking at a year-to-date chart. I mean, the stock has been ripping. It's over 90% to the upside, and this is one that I used to follow over the last couple decades, but it sort of fell or slipped through the cracks because there wasn't a lot of opportunity in the name, particularly after Teva lost a lot of its luster going back to 2015. In 2016, 2015 it actually peaked around $72, but it's been down the last 10 years by about 70% because it lost, and I do remember this, it lost a primary patent because of a court ruling for its primary MS drug where it lost about 25% of its revenues. So, coincidentally, the stock started to drift lower since then. And then you add on to what you mentioned, which is essentially generic drugs as an industry group essentially lost pricing power and competition was increased. That also exacerbated Teva's problems alongside an acquisition they made, which cost them a lot of money and they issued a lot of debt. So there's been a multi-year problem with Teva as a stock, but throughout this entire time they have maintained relevance, not primarily as a generic manufacturer, but they have their own portfolio of branded medicines. And so they continue to develop new medicines, but they have the patent cliffs that to deal with. And there's sort of this boom and bust cycle that they're facing in their products. But, there was some good news today, and the stock did gap higher by about 26%. They have a partnership with Sanofi for a drug that's now in the experimental phase 3 trials that will show some positive results to deal with Crohn's disease and irritable bowel syndrome.
It's a big one.
Which again created, it's a big one because a lot of folks are facing this kind of chronic illness, and this is essentially what pharmaceuticals want to sell products into, those chronic ailments, and altogether. The data came in very promising. The stock has been trending higher prior to this, but it's now looking very promising that potentially they will conclude the phase 3 trials and, of course, look for FDA approval once it's completed, probably in the next couple of quarters or so.
The reason for the timing of this and the pop in the stock is particularly interesting is because the company is now transitioning to growth going forward again after a significant period of contraction on the top line, to your point about the generics competition, a few missteps on their own particular drugs or just losing exclusivity, from 2018 all the way through basically last year, this year. This is a company whose revenues were routinely contracting. And so it seems like the last year, the market's been pricing kind of the lowered risk of downside from competition, product loss, and now this kind of culminates with a real scientific breakthrough possibly, because compared to the placebo, the patients who were taking the high dose, remission doubled compared to the placebo. That's pretty good. More than doubled.
Yeah. So, I mean, to summarize, everything you mentioned, if you just pick out the variables, 3 primary ones, or at least 2. So if you look at, the generic competition, prices may have found a floor inflection point as an industry. You also have to consider the aspects of sales, which are now moving in the right direction for Teva. That comes down to, loss mitigation on the generics, but also improving their branded portfolio. So as more of their branded portfolios are sold, the revenues start to pick up. And then you add the third catalyst and mention, which is, sort of a breakthrough revenue potential for a new chronically treating drug for IBD and Crohn's disease. So these are all, variables. And, I like to attach to at least 2, hopefully 3 variables to serve as a catalyst for a stock. So the market is starting to price in a resumption of steady revenue growth and earnings growth, because if you look at the last year, just to give you the context, I bring you the numbers, but you look at the sales last year at $16.7 billion in market cap as of the close yesterday, $19 billion. the company actually lost about 950 million last year, and about 1.01 billion of that was interest on the debt. So essentially, if they can stem the tide of those losses, which again, it seems to be finding that inflection point where essentially they're generating more net income outside of paying the debt, which is still quite large at 19 billion. That's accretive to equity, and so I think that's what we're seeing here. And this is a pretty good catalyst for the stock, the company, as well as again just looking at the price action with the gap to the upside on the news today.
All right. Big move for Teva and big embrace by the street here of their pipeline, too. So it's a condition that affects a lot of people. And also, if it works so well for something as nefarious as Crohn's, then there's probably going to be a potential connections and overlap with other digestive things. And, it's just a big market to be in right now. Appreciate it, George. Good assessment. Thank you, GT.